And then that way I can walk around the room with my microphone. One thing that I will say is the P1, the P2, and the P3 homeworks from that purple sheet that you got yesterday, those are on your own. Those will be collected. Just know that we're not going to go over, we're not going to have notes for P1, P2, and P3. Okay? But those will be collected at some point in time. If you have any of those first four done, because we went to P4 yesterday, you can turn those in at any point in time, and I'll correct them and get them back to you and all that fun stuff. Okay? Now, the confusion was, like yesterday, we didn't get through all of the white sheet. Okay? So that was just like in-class notes and stuff like that, and all of those are posted online too on It's Learning. Okay, so those are on It's Learning. I always post a blank one and then a filled-in one. Okay, and then in the selected practice folder is if you need to check your answers and stuff on those, they're all in there too. Okay, all right. And so I'm through P4 right now, and today then I'll put P5 up later on. Okay? Because we might get through all of P5 today, but we might not. So maybe I won't put it up until tomorrow. Like that. Okay? Okay. And tentatively right now, we're still planning on the chapter P test there, but this might all get pushed back a little bit, and we might push the test back to the 18th or the 19th. Okay? Never know. Okay? We're crazy like that. Okay? So, we're going to go off the blue sheet today. Before I get too far involved with this, you will need a graphing calculator today. So, a quadratic equation in X is one that can be written of the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Okay? Where a, b, and c are real numbers, and a is not equal to 0, because if a was equal to 0, it wouldn't be a quadratic, it would be a linear equation. So you've got to have that x squared term in order for it to be a quadratic. If it were an x cubed term, then it would become a cube. If it was an x to the fourth term, we would call it a quartet. X to the fifth, a quintet. I don't know what the sixth one is, so I'm not even going to go that far. Okay? There are many ways to solve quadratic equations. Factoring, completing the square, quadratic formula, graphing. Okay? We're going to briefly go through those four today, and in all cases, we give our answers either real numbers. Okay? Sometimes there's 2, sometimes there's 1, sometimes there's 0 real answers, or imaginary numbers. So if there's 0 reals, then there's 2 imaginaries. If there's 1 real, then it's a double root. Okay? If there's 2 reals, then there's 0 imaginaries. There's got to be 2 total answers because it's a quadratic, and the degree is 2. Okay? So, let's dive right into everybody's favorite factoring. Maybe. There it goes. For some reason, 2007's greatest technology is running a little slow today. Okay? That's my computer. It's from like 2007. And I'm not joking. Okay? Alright? So, factoring. Okay? So, for factoring, oh, come on now. Work for me. Okay? We're talking about the 2 sets of parentheses. If you had me last year or in the past, sometimes I refer to it as the butt cheeks. Okay? And that's what we're talking about here now. So, when that lead coefficient is 1, it's relatively simple. You look at that last term, whatever multiplies together to be that last term and adds to be that middle term, then that's what you fill it in with. Okay? But in this case, when A is not equal to 1, then you got to do, for lack of a better term, guessing and checking. You just got to try some stuff. And it's okay. You might not get it the very first time. Okay? It might take you 2 or 3 times to get it. But the only way to get better is by doing it. Okay? And doing it and seeing some patterns and all that fun stuff. Okay? Remember, when you think you got it factored, it doesn't take very long. It might take you 15 to 20 seconds to go back and do that multiplication and work backwards. Okay? Remember that these two, this first term here and this first term here, multiply together to be that one. And this last term here and this last term here multiply together to be those two. And then you got the crazy combo where these two plus these two, okay, give you that middle one. Okay? So you got all that crazy combo-ness going on. So, did anybody factor this bad boy yet? Anybody come up with it? What do you got?
2x minus 1 and then 2x minus 3.
2x minus 1 and 2x minus 3. Now, I agree with you already, but I'm going to spend the 15 seconds and I'm going to check it. Okay? So, 2x times 2x multiplied together gives me 4x squared. So my first workout. Negative 1 times negative 3 gets me positive 3. So my last terms work out. Outsides, 2x times negative 3 is negative 6x. Insides, negative 1 times 2x is negative 2x. Negative 6x plus negative 2x gives me negative 8x. So we factored it correct. Okay? Right? Then, it says we set each factor, 2x minus 1 equal to 0, and 2x minus 3 equal to 0. We put both of those equal to 0. Okay? And then we solve those. So here I would add 1. Here I would add 3. And then here I would divide by 2. So x equals 1/2. And here I would divide by 2. And x equals 3/2. And those then are the two answers that I get that make that quadratic 0. Questions on that? Okay. Solving that very same one by graphing. Okay. What I'm going to do on my graphing calculator is I'm going to open up a graphic page, or a graphing page, I should say. Okay. And then I'm going to go 4x squared minus 8x plus 3. I'm not going to put it equal to 0. I'm just going to graph the function. And then when I hit enter, it should graph for me. Now, you being you, me being me, I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this, okay, so I can see those, so it gets a little bit bigger, okay, and then I can move that around and all that stuff. It's easier for me to move stuff around on that, but, you know, you do you and I do me, okay. Then I'm going to go into the menu page, and I'm going to analyze my graph for the zeros. Okay, and so there is one of my zeros. That's the 3/2 one. And then I've got to do analyze graph again for my other 0. And there's my other 0. So that I have both zeros on there. Right here and right there. Okay. Then let's capture that page. Bless you. And then let's post that page. Here's where this becomes Too big. Okay. And so then this one here is the 1/2. And this one here is the 3/2. Okay. Just read the calculator, put it in decimal form. Okay, but we still get the exact same things. Okay? So that's graphing. Okay? Come on. So, my question to you is, when we were solving by factoring, after we factored the quadratic, why is it mathematically legal for us to set each factor to 0? So, meaning back here in green, we put the two factors equal to 0. Why is that mathematically legal?
Even if you divide both sides by the other term, it won't affect the equation.
Okay, right?
Since they're like both parentheses, they're just multiplying, so one of them has to be 0 for it to equal 0.
Okay, all right. Both good answers. Okay, both saying pretty much the same thing, right? Okay.
You're trying to get x by itself, so you have to set the other side to 0 because there's technically nothing on the other side.
Okay. All right. Love these answers. Loving these answers. Okay. Do you remember what these are all? What these are all? We're all saying the same thing. Remember what we're saying? We can say it in 3 words. What?
No.
No. Because the y-intercept is that c part. Yeah. It's a property, actually. Okay. It's called the 0 product property. Grab a blue sheet behind you. Okay. The 0 product property says that when you're multiplying and you get and your result is 0, whatever you're multiplying, one of them has to be 0, or all of them have to be 0. Okay? So that's different from if we had something along the lines of x squared plus 17x equals 16. Okay? I can't say that I can't factor the left side and then say that's equal to 2, and then the other factor is equal to 8. Okay? Because 2 and 8 might be my 2 favorite numbers that multiply to be 16, but your 2's might be 14, 4 and 4. Or 32 and 1/2. Okay? So you get that ambiguity in there. So when you multiply and this is 0, trying to find which one I wanted to use. But when you multiply and it's 0, okay, then 1 or both of them, or 3 of them if you've got 3 terms, have to be 0. Okay? That 0 product property. Coming back for good times. Okay? Completing the square. Now, the sidebar gives us ways to do this. Okay? And I'll kind of tweak it just a little bit as we're going along, just from my experience of what makes it a little bit easier to go with. So, the first thing says, set the equation equal to 0 and try and factor. So, we got to distribute in there. So then that would give me x squared minus 4x plus 11 equals 2x minus 10. I'm going to subtract 2x and add 10 to both sides. Gives me x squared minus 6x plus 21 equaling 0. two numbers that multiply together to be positive 21 and add together to be negative 6. My choices are 1 and 21 or 3 and 7. Okay? 1 and 21 would either get me 22 or 20, depending if I add or subtract them. 3 and 7 would get me 4 or 10. But so that's not going to work out. Okay? So not factorable. Okay? So what we do then is we take this constant term right here and we move it over to the other side. So that leaves us with x squared minus 6x, and I'm going to leave a gap there too. Okay? Equals negative 21. Okay? When completing the square, I'm a gap person because then I like to fill gaps. Okay? Now this step 3, and this is me, doesn't have to be you, but this is me, I like to write out this step 3. Okay? So this step 3 says, find that middle term. Well, my middle term is negative 6. That's my middle term. Then I'm going to take that middle term and I'm going to divide it by 2. Then I'm going to take that middle term that I just divided by 2 and I'm going to square it. Again, if you want to do all of this work in your head, I trust you. You can do all of this work in your head. Okay? The reason that I do it that way is because this term right here that I just found, that is going to fill my gap. Because that's just because we divide it by 2 and then square it. Because we need to have those two terms. So that's why we take the halvesies of it. Okay? But now what have I done to my equation? It's off balance, right? So I need to put it back into line by adding 9 to that side, to the negative 21 side, so that I stay in balance. Okay? Now, this left side is going to factor to be x, and then here's the cool part, and it's going to be that term right there. That side's going to factor to be x minus 3, quantity squared. The other side, negative 21 plus 9, is going to be negative 12. Okay. I'm a visual type of a guy. I like to just, and it doesn't take that much lead or that much ink to jot that down, or even that much space. Okay. All right? So now I've got x minus 3 quantity squared equals negative 12. How am I going to solve it for x? Step 5 says, I'm going to square root both sides. Okay. So if I square root both sides, we'll take the easy one first. The left side, what's the square root of x minus 3 quantity squared? X minus 3. Now we got to deal with that square root of negative 12. Okay, well, let's deal with that here now. So the square root of negative 12. First off, do I like square roots of negative numbers? So that means what's coming into play? I, yep. Okay, so that's the square root of negative 1, or I. Can I break up 12 into a perfect square factor? Give me another chance. 4 and 3. 6 and 2 are both not perfect. Oops, I put 4 and 2 now. Come on. and 3. So that this one then becomes I, this one becomes 2, and this one just stays the square root of 3. Okay? So what is my right side here? The square root of negative 12 becomes what? 2i squared of 3. But I am solving an equation, and I took the square root of both sides. Plus or minus. I have to add in that plus or minus 2i times the square root of 3. Okay? Because I took an even root, and I'm solving. If this was just a simplified type one, then we wouldn't need the plus or minus. But because we're solving, we need that plus or minus. Okay? Almost done now. Now just to finish it off, I want to get x by itself, right? So I do what? Add 3 to both sides. Now my question to you is, does that 3 that I add to both sides, can I combine that with this 2 that's outside with the I? No, because they are differing terms. So this is going to be 3 plus or minus 2i times the square root of 3. Okay. Questions on completing the square? Fantastic. Saving the best for next. The quadratic formula. Now I put on. Why is it not getting me off mute? Oh man, I wanted the 2 pi. Darn. Here I thought I was going to be all funky and show you the quadratic wrap. Epic fail, Linsmeyer. So, what is said quadratic formula?
Opposite of b plus or minus the square root of 2b minus 4ac all over 2.
Close. One part you got wrong.
b squared.
B squared, not 2b. Yep. Opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay. If you don't have it memorized yet, you got some work to do. That should just be one of those, like a squared plus b squared equals c squared type ones that you just got memorized. Okay? Kicker is what? If I'm going to use the quadratic formula, what's the kicker? I'll highlight it. Got to be equal to 0. Okay? It's got to be equal to 0 in order to use the quadratic formula. So this one would be 3x squared minus 6x minus 5 equals 0. Now, if you write down what A is and write down what B is and write down what C is, that's awesome. That's great. That's you. I don't. So this becomes the opposite of negative 6 is positive 6 plus or minus the square root of negative 6 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 5, bless you twice, all over 2 times 3. Six plus minus the square root of 36. Negative 6 quantity squared is 36. 4 times 3 is 12 times negative 5 is negative 60. So this is minus negative 60. So that is 6 plus minus the square root of 96 all over 6. Looking at 96, so the square root of 96 is what times what? 16 times 6. So that is 4 times the square root of 6. Is that my final answer? No, because I've got even numbers on all three outsides. Okay, the 6 inside the radical is protected. Okay, radicals are protection walls, so I can divide everything by 2 that's on the outside, and that gives me 3 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 6 all over 3. Okay. I think this is a good place to stop because I don't think that I can teach you the next 2 examples in 2 minutes and 47 seconds. So that's a good place to stop. If you wanted to get started on P5 homework, that's fine. We are not all the way through P5 yet, okay? But we will be tomorrow. So if you wanted to start on the P5 homework, that's fine. So, yeah, you can leave the calculators on the desk if you want. You can put them back if you want to, but we have pre-calc that follows us next. So, yep, and they'll need them too.